Once, Dorothy handed George the letter Dear John before going to the 35th meeting of graduates. In her letter, she said that she was leaving him to her ex-boyfriend, who was her lover over the past 28 years. She also thought that her former lover was also a biological father of the 3 children of George and Dorothy, who had now grown up. This turned out to be a lie because George presented evidence on the reunification of Dorothy. George planned his revenge and implemented it. His adult children and their families attended reunification, and everyone faced facts in front of their mother. There were 2 sons, George Jr., whom they called the younger, another son named Mike, and daughter Dottie, whom they called Dot for brevity. She was named in honor of Dorothy. Paul, the former guy Dorothy, admitted that he wanted to have nothing to do with Dorothy's family. She also found out that he had sex with her old school friends and her best friend Dixie. Upon learning about all this, Dorothy broke the relationship with Paul. She also broke off relations with her friend Dixie and her husband Joe when she found out that Dixie had sex with her husband George and her boyfriend's boyfriend. Dixie also allowed her husband to have sex with Dorothy when Dorothy lost consciousness. In the end, Dixie did not tell Dorothy that her husband George knew about the upcoming divorce. Now the conclusion. Our divorce was decorated 6 months ago. My life was now quite sad. I spent quite a lot of time in the bar. I think I just want a company, people with whom you can talk. It was then that I began to realize that Dorothy and I really lived a life together. Maybe not the best, and certainly not the worst, but we were comrades. Now every night I returned home to an empty apartment. Sit there and either sit down at the computer or watch TV. The first few months everything was fine, but now it has become very boring. I was in 50 and I was sitting at home alone. I tried to meet several women, but they, like me, seemed lonely. Most of them were sex. I did not want any obligations. I did not want another marriage. It seems that most of these women wanted this. Someone with whom you can share your life and possibly help take care of them. I stayed away from married women. Probably, after what happened to me, I did not want to bear responsibility for the destruction of another marriage, even if my wife was just looking for sex. I started spending more time in my welding business. The money was good, but the money was not my problem. I missed my wife Dorothy. I do not know how to explain it. The woman cheated on me for more than 28 years. We lived in almost separate lives. She did her job, and I have mine. But there were so many times that I began to reflect on the time we spent together. The vacation that we spent with the whole family. We always have a good time. We go to children's games with the ball. We laughed together and supported them. It seems that the only time in the life that I like is to see children and grandchildren. Then I began to remember that every time I come to them, Dorothy there. We talk sweetly with each other, trying not to be rude and not to cause bad memories. Maybe it was just her presence next to me, I don't know. Then I think, to hell with her, the devil with her, damn her for doing this with our life. Then I began to recall all the novels that I had during our marriage. God, I was not a saint. Most women may have met one night, but they were still novels. I think Dorothy could leave me after any of them. Why didn't she do this? Judging by her letter Dear John, she knew about them. I can remember at least 20 times that I cheated on it. Why didn't she ask for a divorce? Maybe because she felt that she was no better than me? Twisted an affair with this moron Paul? Damn, I would like to know. Maybe someday I will ask her. I got up from the sofa to cook something to eat. Damn, I missed the cooks of Dorothy. This woman was able to cook. She knew what I liked and how to cook it. In fact, she knew all my sympathies and antipathy until what beer was my beloved. I think that after 33 years of communication with a person, you will learn a lot about him. Why was I so blind to this old novel? All I knew now is that I would prefer one of her hot pork with fried potatoes and carrots than this frozen pizza that I was going to cook. This weekend, I needed to visit my children in order to eat well. Maybe I would offer to arrange a picnic and they could invite their mother, and she could cook something good. I will offer to bring beer and drinks. It was my specialty. The phone rang. It was my daughter Dot. She said that she came home this weekend and just wants to talk to me and find out how I am doing. I simply answered, "Everything is good for me, dear, but I miss your sweet smiling face." She was my girl, and I really missed her. She was in Michigan, studied at college. She tries to come home at least once a month. When she does this, she remains with her mother. They talk a lot and do their female affairs, whatever they may be. Having talked with her for several minutes, I invited her to call my brother Junior and inform her that she would be at home on the weekend, and we could get together for a picnic. That she could even invite her mother. "Dad," she replied, You miss how Mom cooks, isn't it? No, I said that just... She interrupted me and said, Everything is in order, Dad. I also miss my mother, preparing. I will tell her about cooking, I'm sure she will come. What do you want me to tell her to bring? She was laughing. How can you be so sure that she will appear? I asked. Dad, I should not have told you this. But my mother told you to always come to invite her. I know that you don't want to say this, Dad. But I sincerely believe that Mom loves you. She lives in hell, who arranged herself. She completely blames herself for everything she did with you. I do not think that she will ever cope with this. It is a little bothering me. Her life is a school and family. I know that she does not meet. Several men invited her on a date, and she simply says, No, thank you. Mom also broke with her best friend Dixie. She did not tell me the whole story about why, but I know that this is somehow connected with her old friend and your father. Could you enlighten me? She was laughing. And in general, Dad, what do you want to make Mom to cook? She asked. How about hot pork? Dot interrupted me again. Dad, this is a picnic. No hot pork on a picnic. Okay, I said. How about your mother with gear potatoes about the chicken Barbie? I will buy a chicken, JR will be able to cook it on a grill, and Dorothy can apply its home barbecue sauce and my homemade toothed potatoes? Dot laughed. Okay, Dad, I'll see what can be done. She paused and then said, Dad, I love you. I love you too, dear, I answered. See you on Sunday, then hung up. The frozen pizza was ready. It's time to have dinner. When I started eating pizza, real loneliness seized me. After about half an hour, the phone rang. I looked at the calling number. It was JR. Hello, Dad. Junior here. How are you? He asked. I just finished dinner and watched TV. What's new? I asked. On Sunday, about noon, we have dinner, and we wanted to know if you want to come. What do you have? I asked. The barbecue chicken and potatoes with teeth that you did not know about? He laughed. My children were smart. It should be from Dorothy. I will be there now noon. I answered. Dad, you will bring beer and drinks, and we will bring chicken. Take more chips and sauce, he asked. I will do it, and JR, thank you. At any time, Dad, at any time, he answered and hung up. God, even my children knew that I feel. God, I loved them. It was Sunday, and I went to the house of JR. I remembered beer, drink, chips, and sauce as I was told. When I entered, everyone greeted. I hugged them all. He kissed all the children and 2 daughter-in-law. Dot came up, kissed me on the cheek, and whispered, Do not worry, Dad, she is here. I just looked at the bunker, wondering how she knew what I think about. Then I raised my eyes and saw Dorothy, dressed in a beautiful yellow sunscreen, smearing the chicken with his special sauce barbecue. I went to Dorothy and simply said, Hello, Dorothy. It's nice to see you again. The chicken smells great. Dorothy smiled at me and said, Thank you, George, I did as you like. As a school, I asked. I'm trying to talk a little. Sometimes children act on my nerves, but otherwise, everything is in order. Then she said that she needed to go check the potatoes with cloves in the oven. Mike, my other son, asked if he could talk to me alone for a minute. He had something to discuss with me. So we went to the living room away from everyone, and he said that the Dot was talking to him earlier. Former friends of Dorothy, Dixie, and Joe broke up. Now Joe called Dorothy and molested her. Mike said, Dad, I cannot let this moron disturb my mother. I don't know what's the matter, but Dot said that she would try to humiliate her. I cannot let this happen, Dads. Mom went through it enough. Damn, I like how my children stood up for their mother. I was by no means going to allow my children to get involved in these personal problems. I looked at Mike and told him to stay away. In order not to do stupid things, he had a wife and a child who had to be taken care of. That I will check the problem with Joe. We went outside and joined the barbecue. I said, Junior, thanks for the invitation. It was the best barbecue chicken, which I tried in a long time. He said, Thanks to my mother for preparing it with potatoes. I just looked at Dorothy and said, Thank you, Dorothy. You have always been a great cook. She just looked at me and said, Thank you, George. At any time. I wonder what she meant by the word, at any time. Whether it was just a reservation, or she meant, at any time. I went home and decided what to do with Joe. Now he spoiled my family. It will not happen. I waited for Monday and went to the bar, where, as I knew, Joe could be. I saw that he was sitting on a bar chair and went up to him. He looked very nervous when he saw me. I said, Joe, I need to talk to you. Now I was a welder with strong hands. Joe worked in the office and did not even succeed. Joe looked at me and said, I have nothing to tell you, George. Joe, I said, I want to talk to you. I suggest you get up from a bar, come here and sit with me in the booth for a moment. or I will just go out into the street and wait for you. The choice is this. Yours." Joe got off the stool, went to the booth, and sat opposite me. I looked into his eyes, but for a few seconds I didn't say anything, just to make him wriggle. Then I said, "What is this garbage I heard you call Dorothy?" He looked at me and said, "Why do you need this? You're divorced. She may meet whom she wants. She is an adult. She is more than 20, 1 year old." I looked at him again, waiting before talking, forcing him even more nervous. Now, as if stupid, I spoke in a very quiet voice so that only he could hear me. "I made a mistake, allowing your miserable ass to take possession of it as revenge. I never had to do this. You are not worthy enough to lick shit from her ass. You will call her again. You will apologize for any comments that you made to her or about her. Then you will tell her that you will never be, and I mean never disturb her again. If I ever hear that you called her or in any way slandered her, I will personally track you and put your miserable ass in a bag for corpses." I expressed myself clearly? He said, "Yes, I understand," in a quiet voice. Once again, I looked at him and said, "I have not heard you." He said, "Yes, I understand and promise to never call her again and not to disturb. And one more thing. Call your Pedor's friend the Paul and give him the same message. This is not a threat, this is a fact. Next time, if I have to return, there will be no conversation. Do I need to break your hand or break my face now so that the message is loud and clear? No, George, I understand and transmit the message to the floor." I looked at him and said, "Call Dorothy as soon as possible. I do not want you to upset her anymore." Then I got up and went out the door. There was Thursday and I went to work. I and one of my employees worked in welding when an explosion occurred. When I woke up, I was lying on a hospital bed. There was one of my daughter-in-law, Lisa, and looked at me. She shouted, he woke up, and hugged me tightly. I asked her what happened. She said, "Last Thursday there was an explosion, and since then you are unconscious." "What day is today?" I asked. "Sunday," Lisa said. "You were unconscious from the evening of Thursday. We all took turns sitting with you in a 4-hour shift. Everything except Dorothy. Sadness seized me when she said that Dorothy never sat with me. I don't know why, I guess I just thought." When Dorothy entered the room with tears in her eyes. Then Lisa continued, "Everyone except Dorothy never went home. She stayed here in the room with you and slept in an armchair. We had to make her go home and she returned for an hour. She even canceled the sick leave at a school on Friday to just sit here with you. All this time, Dorothy was in the doorway and cried. I did not know what to think. Then Dorothy went to the bed, hugged me and said, 'With a return, George, we missed you.' When Dorothy stepped back, my whole family came up to me, hugged me and kissed me. Most of them cried. All these emotions made me cry too. Then the bunker came up to me, hugged and kissed, then said, 'We all missed you and love you, Daddy.' By the way she said this, I realized that she includes Dorothy. The doctor came in and told everyone to leave the ward. When my family left, Dorothy said, 'I won't go anywhere. He is my husband and I will stay here with him.' The doctors were taken back and said that everything was in order. 'Please just sit down,' and Dorothy sat in a chair. The doctor examined me and asked a lot of questions. I told him that the last thing I remember was an explosion, and then woke up a few minutes ago. The doctor wrote down in my map that I can probably go home the next day if all the tests are negative. The only thing he did not want me to be left alone. I need someone to be with me at least for the next few days. I had nowhere to go, I had to rest. It seemed that everything would be fine. He said that I have a concussion, but as far as he could judge, there was no internal bleeding. He said that I was very lucky. God gave me a second chance for life. They could easily kill me when I was thrown away from the explosion. Then he left the room, saying that the first thing he would go in the morning to check me. My family returned to the room and Dorothy explained everything to them. They asked, "Who will stay with the dad? We cannot leave him alone." Dorothy looked at me and then at the children and said, "I will take my dad with me home for a few days until he gets better. He needs someone who will look after him." I called to school and allocate a week of personal time. He explained to the school about the incident and found free time without problem. I looked at Dorothy and said, "Wait a minute. Do I have no vote right about this?" My whole family looked at me and said in unison, "No." I just said, "Okay." Dorothy went out to talk to the nurses and I asked JR about my business and Benny, my assistant at work. He said that Ben is all right. He was free from the accident. He called this in 911. When my mother found out that you were here, she took possession of your office and organized work for the weekend. She asked Ben to call her on Monday and make sure everyone has a job. She just took control of Dad under her control. She said that after 33 years of working with you, she knew enough about the business to see that the work was done. I know that she offended you, bad dad, but she is a great mother and a damn good woman. I can't tell you what to do, but she really loves you, Dad. We all know this, but we will observe everything you do. When my family left, nurses came and gave me medicine. My head was terribly ill. I went to sleep. I woke up early in the morning and saw Dorothy, sitting in a chair and watching me. She saw how I opened my eyes and asked if everything was all right with me. I asked her why she didn't go home with the rest. She simply replied, "Tomorrow we will go home, George," and I nodded back to fall asleep. The next morning, Mike and Jay were there to help me collect clothes, flowers, and postcards that I received while Dorothy examined me. She received all the information from the doctor about what to do in the next couple of days. My boys helped me get into Dorothy's apartment. I realized that I have never been there. She had a lot of our old furniture there. My favorite chair and sofa. My sons put me in a chair and fit my legs. They told me that they would see me later and left. Dorothy entered and asked if I was hungry. I told her that I could eat a sandwich and maybe a cup of coffee. She went to the kitchen while I was resting. A few minutes later, she entered the sandwich with ham and cheese, which I really liked. Swiss cheese, tomatoes, ham on a fried rye bread. She remembered my beloved sandwich, also a cup of hot coffee, which was just tasted. She put the tray and put it all in front of me, turned on the TV on my favorite sports news channel, and left the room. Damn, I missed her, really. It seemed that only her presence in the house did everything better. What the hell is I going to do? I honestly did not know. After eating, I must dozed off. I remember how I dreamed. At least I thought in a dream about when Dorothy and I talked for the last time. I remember Dorothy said, "I remembered all of our 33 years. I can't say that there was love, and I can't say that it was not. We had a marriage, we had sex, we had a family. In our family, we both really loved our children. They knew this and kept it in their family. We worked well on their upbringing. Maybe there really was love between us. But for a long period of time, we simply did not work on it as it should. Maybe if we showed our feelings for each other, as we did to our children, it could have developed differently. I know that it's already too late for us. But the way you treated me last month, I think I began to believe that writing a letter in general could be a mistake. I sincerely believed that I was falling in love with you." She cried and said, "Isn't that a jug?" Then she wiped her tears from her eyes. Then I remember the doctor said, "I had a concussion, but as far as he could judge, there was no internal bleeding. He said that I was very lucky. God gave me a second chance for life. They could easily kill me when I was thrown away from the explosion. I woke up, and Dorothy took my empty tray and a cup and now sat and looked at me. 'George, are you feeling good?' asked Dorothy. 'George, I want to thank you for what you did for me, what I've done,' I asked. Joe called and apologized for boring me. I know you talked to him. I don't know who told you, but for me it was a great relief. He said that he would never bother me again. That's not all, George. Paul called me and said almost the same thing. I don't know how you did it, but I just wanted to say thank you. While we apologize, I have one for you, Dorothy. While I was with you in the belief mode, I allowed Joe to use you. Looking back, for me it was even low. If I could return this, I would have done it. I know what Dixie told you about this. This is what I should never have done. I think you shocked my cage too much." Then I said, "Dorothy, we still need to talk, but now I would like to relax a bit. George, I have prepared for you a dot room." She was very glad that you stayed here and offered my room. As you know, she had to return to college today, but she said that she would keep in touch and would probably come home to see you next time. Weekend. Dorothy helped me get up from the chair and go into the DOT room. I brought me medicines and I went to bed. The next few days I was under severe drug treatment. Most of the time I spent in a chair or bed. Whenever I woke up, I knew that Dorothy was nearby. An excellent nurse will come out of it. My sons stopped to see how I was doing. I told them that everything is fine with me. The next day we had to go to the doctor and see how things were going. Dorothy maintained contact with my business and made sure that the work was completed. This woman did everything for me. Why have I never seen this? I think that in order to wake some people, we need a divorce and dying experience. The next day we went to the doctor, and he said that everything was in order. That by the next Monday, I will be able to return to work. Dorothy said that this is great news and was very happy for me. She also knew that it was time for me to return to my house. She took me to my house and followed me. Compared to her house, he seemed dull and dark. I think it was just a female business. The most striking event in my house at that moment was Dorothy standing there. I looked at her and just wondered where and when we were mistaken. I asked her if I could go home to her the next day and talk to her. She looked at me and said, "George, at any time, would you like to have dinner with me? I can cook it for you when you come." I looked at her and said that it would be very nice to do it on her part. She looked at me again and said, "Fried pork, fried potatoes and carrots." I just smiled. She knew my favorite dinner. Epilogue. I went in and we had my favorite dinner. Then we had a long conversation. I told her that I would like to go on a date with her, but we will have to not rush. We both lived in our places. I began to see her at least 5 evenings a week. I think we began to fall in love with each other. We never perceived each other for granted and tried our best not to remember the past. We did not talk about marriage, but for all our friends, we were a couple. Our children and grandchildren were always happy to see us together. Now returning home to your apartment was not so bad. I knew that I would see Dorothy the next day. When we first had sex, I thought it would be embarrassed. But this is not so. We just rallied like a couple and put each other in the first place. We literally made love. I no longer visited bars. I did not need either. I had a loving girl whom I could come to any time when I felt such a desire, and it began to happen quite often. Will we be in repeated marriage every time? We do not know. Right now we meet, spend this day after day, and we like it. You see, as the doctor said, God gave me a second chance for life. This is the lesser that I could do for Dorothy.